red, that means it's recording.
Oh, that feels counterintuitive. Doesn't it feel like it should be red is go? Red is like, we're not recording.
Well, we're here and we are officially live on Facebook. So why don't you do the thing, Rach? Why don't you introduce us, introduce yourself, talk about all the things you've had in your mind. You got a lot of things you wanted to get off that chest of yours. So why don't you share it with the fans, with the listeners, with
Guys, it's
the folks.
11:17, which means we're an hour and 17 minutes behind. But honestly, in the world of being almost 36 weeks pregnant, that's kind of right on time. You know, that's how I'm feeling. Guys, I'm Rachel LaForce.
I'm Alex Gettlin.
Yep. I'm your host. I'm your very pregnant host. We're married. We're comedians. We typically do this podcast every Monday. It's been a little touch and go through my third trimester. Because while balancing that, we're also doing another show.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just finding our bearings, but we're going to keep doing it because that's
here's what
we
I'll
do.
say.
Oh, okay. What will you say?
We have a lot of priorities, but our first priority...
That should just be on our Christmas card. The Getlins. We have a lot of priorities.
But our first priority is...
You.
No, our son.
Oh, our son.
Right.
I didn't mean you. I thought if it was like a holiday card,
that
it would be like you, the person receiving the card.
Well, that sounds like we have customers. Our first priority is you, our loyal fans and listeners.
Okay, well then that'll go out to our Patreon people.
Yeah, we'll get there one day. But anyway,
not on
guys,
Patreon.
so we did do an episode last week.
We did.
We didn't release it, though, officially. We didn't put out, the live stream went up and everything. We had a few people interact. But we didn't get around to releasing the audio per usual. Our first week ever... We've taken a week off except for the holiday break.
But that's what's messed up is we didn't take the week off. We did it. I think if my brain works the way that I want it to, and I can better articulate the place I was in last week, I think I feel safe to record it or to put it out there. And then people listen to it and go, this was fine. Yeah. And also, like, boring.
Well, you didn't say anything inappropriate.
I know I didn't say anything inappropriate, but so basically, if you have not listened to this episode yet, because I think it'll actually be fun to release this one and then release last week's, right?
We could do that, I guess. Be out of order, but sure.
Well, I understand that, but that's what I'm saying. So that I would be, expressing to people the place I was in. First of all, we were so tired. That was like 7 p.m. on like a Wednesday, just because I was like, it's our commitment. We have to do it. Over a year and a half, and we've hit it every week. I was like, we got to do it. Excuse me. Again, 36 weeks pregnant. So, I've just been in this place of awakening where I'm just noticing that it's like we have created a culture where if you don't agree with me, then you're not. It just feels like the woke Olympics.
That's a good way to. That is a funny sketch.
And
that's like a Portlandia sketch. The woke
it's
Olympics.
a great sketch, but it's also like just the internet. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like the most woke thing to do with the woke Olympics is to boycott it because it's a form of competition.
Wait, say that last line again. I cut you off.
Because it's a form of competition.
Oh.
And there's therefore ranking of someone is better than someone else. The most woke thing to do at the woke Olympics is to boycott the Olympics in the ultimate status of wokeness.
That is so funny.
Well, you know what? To me,
so that's how I was feeling. Where it's just like
that's a clip. I should make that a clip.
And it's always a clip when you comment and call it a clip. You know what I mean? That's when you know it's like, that's going to be a good clip.
Yeah.
It's going to get 0 circulation on Instagram now. Don't you know?
We haven't mastered the algorithm.
Who has? I could do a whole series on just...
You know who has those gals who do the shuffle videos that keep popping up in my newsfeed or in my Discover page?
I mean...
You watch one thing if you think it's a fun, somebody just dancing, having a good time, and that's all they send me. It's just that, bodybuilders... some political libertarian shit, and then comedians. That's my whole Instagram. It's shuffle girls, bodybuilder dudes.
I got an ad for a tummy tuck today. I was pretty pissed about that.
Yeah.
I'm like, first of all...
I should have waited till after you gave birth.
Thank you. You know what I mean? Let me enjoy this part before you shame me.
What is a tummy tuck versus lipo?
They're the same thing.
Okay.
I believe. I don't know.
But anyway, so we might drop last week's episode.
So just how I was feeling, which is, And I would hope at this point, people have listened to me enough, or you follow me to know that I'd like to think I'm aware of my growth edges. I would like to think that I know there's so many things that I don't know a lot about. There's a lot of communities that are not a part of my, immediate identity. So I'm always open to learning. I always, no matter what, want to respect people and want people to live their life to whatever their truth is, bar none. But I also think that a lot of accepting what your truth is accepting that it doesn't mean that that's everyone's truth. And so we've created this culture of just shoving down people's throats, if you don't believe this way, then you're a bigot. And it's there's a difference between learning and teaching about your, unconscious bias or what microaggressions are or, internal misogyny. These things are very real.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to be talking about them, but it's there's a difference between that and expecting everybody to know every single new term all the time. I want to be do you guys not work?
Well,
you guys don't have other things going on? Because one of the things I remember I said that I felt bad about, or not felt bad about, but was conscious of, where it was when we recorded, it was June 2nd. And it was as soon as June 1st hit, it wasn't hey, happy Pride. This is such an exciting month.
Yeah.
If you're a part of the LGBTQTIA community. I said T twice. I did it again.
I'm doing LGBT. QIA, come on. That's not, and I'll take the heat if someone really has beef with me. Lesbian, bi, gay, transgender. Queer as fine. That's what Q means, right? Queer?
Yeah.
Because
queer, I love the term queer. There's parts of me that identify with that word, and with that identity for sure.
Well, let me finish what I was saying though.
Okay.
Because I've read online, also there's a debate. Apparently Q means questioning. And if you're just questioning where you fit in this sexuality spectrum, gender identity spectrum, and it's yeah, we should question everything. You don't need to be, come on, questioning doesn't need to be part of the thing. I'm adamant about that.
I'm isn't everyone questioning everything all of the time?
And then
we could have a flag for that though, just in general. I'm here and I'm questioning.
The problem is QAnon took the Q, so you can't have a Q flag unless questioning rebrands the Q. And then IA, I've literally never met, and I know I'm not the beacon of, I know everybody, but
you don't.
There isn't an, if you really are asexual or intersex, best of luck with everything in your life, and I hope this works out for you. But come on, LGBT is enough. We don't need to keep adding letters.
I hear the meat of what you're saying, which is we would understand that all of these different sexual identities are a part of this group. To me, I feel I acknowledge anyone, but there's somebody that we know within our, umbrella of folks, and she was talking about that she's demisexual.
What does that mean?
So I learned about this through her.
Okay.
So it's people who do not have you and I are fairly flirtatious people, right? You meet a lot of people, and
not anymore. I locked that shit down when I got ringed up, baby.
So that's the good answer. But no, you and I are we're
I'll flirt with gay dudes. I'll take the compliments. Bring them on, baby.
I didn't know that's where this was going.
But with the ladies, no.
But I'm
ice that out.
Okay. All right. You're a good husband. You're going to be a great father. I trust you. We don't have any trust issues in our relationship. But I'm saying
silly.
You and I could be very easily sexually attracted to a lot of people. Even if that doesn't mean that we would act on it or want to have sex with them or whatever.
Sure.
But meaning you and I are flirtatious personalities in that way.
Okay.
I'm sure it's not at all hard. So demisexual is someone who does not experience any sexual attraction until they have developed in a very intense emotional connection. Now, that's not to say, because some people are going to be well, Rachel, that's when you should only share your body with somebody, is when you are emotionally attached. I know. But to an nth degree, not oh, I don't sleep around when I'm dating. I only sleep with people I'm committed to. Has zero sexual attraction.
I understand that. I would say, first of all, that's good. I think we should strive for that as society, not to sound like the prude in the room, but I think a big reason why a lot of relationships have struggle finding healthy, sustenance these days is because we're not demisexual enough. That we were so Puritan as a culture for so long. We swung the other direction, and now it's like fuck everybody all the time, blah, and it's.
I don't think it has anything to do with sex. I think it's that people don't know how to communicate.
Okay, but either way, to me, let me finish my sentence. To me, gay, lesbian, bi, all that, that's different than demisexual, because the lesbian, gay, bi, pansexual, whatever, like that to me, my understanding of it is that is kind of identifying who you're sexually attracted to based on their gender or biological sex. The demisexual thing seems like it's more about it's completely what their gender or biological sex is seems irrelevant to that, and it's more about talking about your needs as an emotional creature before you're intimate with someone. Like it just feels like a whole different sort of conversation.
Well, I don't know. I'm not a part of it.
Because couldn't you say, well, I'm a hetero demisexual? It's like, oh, so you just, or I'm a gay demisexual?
You could. I think a lot of them are pansexual.
And pan is, it's like bi, except bi is to...
Bi tends to mean that you are attracted to someone of your same gender identity, and then typically of the opposite, what used to be. So bi, pretty much as we know it, is like a man that's with other men and with women, or a woman who is with women and other women.
Yeah.
But now it doesn't mean that. It could be you're sexually attracted to people of your own gender identity as well as people of other gender identities. But that's where they developed the word pansexual, which is to mean that you're sexually attracted to all sorts of people. So you're kind of attracted, you're sexually attracted to the person.
But why is pan not the same as bi?
Because bi tends to mean that you're really only, you have the two options, I guess. I'm still learning about all this, which is what I'm saying. But don't deny somebody's just because it's not real to you. That's not fair to go,
whatever
well.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Stop. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if I understand the mentality of like everybody needs their identifiers for everything, and that's great. If you want to embrace that for you and everything, that's awesome. But you got to understand, like most people aren't going to be able to take the time or have the interest. You can call them a bigot if you want, or selfish, whatever, to be like, yeah, every term and all, like our parents' generation and people who live in the Midwest and shit. It should be like, yes, we have all these sub terms that are good to know. But honestly, if someone's making the effort and it's like gay, straight, bi, other, let's meet them in the middle. Let's let people, don't jump to, like, it just, to me, what feels like it starts to hit the windows of absurdity. Like now we've seen calls for people being like, don't use men and women or trans men and trans women because that's not inclusionary enough. We need to use terms that focus on like the scientific differences, like people who can menstruate, people who can give birth. That's absurd. People are not going to start referring to genders as people who can't give birth. This is your side. People who can give birth. That's your, like, it's just, it's an absurdist way to try and make the vernacular popular.
Well, I feel like it's a little judgmental to call it absurdist because that is saying your truth or who you are is absurd. I hear what you're saying of, I think what the language I would use is that is a very progressive idea. And to get to that place, we're not there yet.
I would just say it's also not a practical way for people to communicate. You're not going to communicate.
I would actually say that's very if the practicality is now that if somebody's like, there's too many terms, I can't keep up, then to me, I'm like, that's actually incredibly practical. That's two things. So we went from a soup, a minestrone soup of different identities to just going, people who can give birth this way, people who cannot this way. So anyway, I didn't want to get into all of this. Okay. I was wanting to speak my truth, which was saying that my frustration last week about not only, it was just where it was like, rather than just walking ourselves into Pride Month, I felt like right away I was being bombarded with like, you have to know this thing and this thing and this thing. And if you don't, but not the majority of those posts were not coming from my friends who, live those lives and or have those identities. And so that's where my frustration was really coming from of like, and I spoke a little bit about that as well, and probably not as eloquently as I would have liked to, but is similar to, discussions around race in our country too, where it's like, what is the difference between performative behavior and true allyship? And even the word ally, like, I know a lot of people have different opinions about it, both in the Black community and in other communities or racial identities. Because there is something that feels like, I think it'll be interesting to see how that term develops, I guess, is what I'm wanting to say, because I feel like
you and I are very different when it comes to this, because I'm just of the mind of like, look, man, I make an effort. I think I'm a good person. If you don't like how it comes out, that's on you. I have no issues with what I say and how I say it. And I just move on from it, because you're always going to have people that are like, you didn't do it right by my standards.
Sure. I need you to calm down. I don't feel at all that I'm saying that I'm conscientious. And also so much of what I do is share about emotional truth and emotional intelligence and hopefully awakening our cultures to there's so much more than what we're actually participating in as a culture. And what we're participating in is the most toxic choice, and we can make other choices. So to me, it is important to be clear with my words, because it's all that I have. I'm not saying that people are always going to hear me and go, oh, she's right. It's not about being right. It's like there's plenty of times in this that people are going to disagree with me or, have their own opinions, and that's for them. But for me, it's important to make sure that the words I'm saying, I'm not interested in being flippant. And there's a difference between being on stage and making a joke. And if someone's like, well, I don't like that joke. It's like, great. Well, that joke came from the top of my intelligence, meaning that's a term if you're not familiar in comedy of like, you should always be making jokes from the top of your intelligence, meaning like assuming that your audience is smarter than you and things like that. So, if I were to make a joke and somebody didn't like it, it's like, well, I'm sorry, but it's a joke. But I feel like if I'm talking in earnest, it's just important for me to make sure I can stand behind what I say.
Sure. I was just saying that I don't feel that way. I think I used to like make.
But then, see, but the interesting thing to me about that is like, you're like, well, if you don't like it, but it's like, but then I think about how upset you've been, like genuinely upset about, all of the conflict with Israel and Palestine over the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
And people, in my opinion, speaking out of turn, meaning I don't think that they knew anything about the Israeli-Palestinian, conflict up until infographics came out, and suddenly they had very vast opinions.
Yeah. But that whole thing just reinforces where I'm at now.
What do you mean?
Because it's one of those things where it's like, it's just a reminder that in general, people tend to glob on whatever narratives feel like work for them. And there's very little of like, at least in like the internet social media space. Now, human to human conversation, which is how we're supposed to communicate, it's different. I'm talking about like the social media in like clip space. It's a losing battle. It's better to just be like, all right, man, say what you're going to say. If you don't like it, like if I don't like it, I'm not even going to try and engage in that format, because it's a fruitless fight. So I'd rather be like, okay. And if you don't like what I say, fine. I'll give you an example. On I post, this is from like a little bit ago. I made a post kind of just be like, hey, here's some information that everybody's leaving out just for some context. And someone who I like vaguely know has been like in a comment war with somebody else who I don't even know at all in response to my post. And this one person who I vaguely know was saying things that I vehemently disagree with. And I'm just like, you're so ignorant, dude. And he was married into my family, like at a distance. And I messaged my dad. I was like, hey, is so-and-so still in the family? He's like, oh no, they got, like, the person divorced them. They're not in the family anymore. And I was like, thank God. And I went and blocked them and deleted all their comments. And I almost never ever do that. But it's like, if you come to my space and write shit that I like fundamentally oppose, you're out of here. So my only point with that anecdote is that what you shared, right, is that at this point, I don't care about trying to like tiptoe around everything to make sure like everybody, and I know that's not what you're saying, but like my attitude is like, I only have the energy to feel like I'm informed to the point that feels good for me and say what I believe in. And if someone has issue with that, that's okay, because I'll stand behind what I said. But I'm no longer concerned with like, is this the way we're supposed? Is this the way to do it, or is that?
But I think that no, I have to reaffirm again, because I feel like, or what I'm feeling is you're telling me that I'm tiptoeing. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not scared of being wrong. I refuse to, this is a privilege to be able to put out our opinions.
Sure.
And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to make sure that I stand behind what I say. And then if you don't like it, well, that's okay. But if I'm, 35 weeks pregnant, super tired, just trying to get a podcast in for the sake of doing it, and I was speaking more liberally without really thinking through what I was wanting to say, I think it's smart to pause and go, is that something I really want to put out there? Is that what I want to stand behind?
Right. I get it.
I don't think that's tiptoeing, and I don't think there's anything about my personality or the things that I share on public forums that's like, is this okay with you? It's not that at all. I think it's my awareness of, again, this term of like my growth edges. There's a lot I don't know about. All I know is my own experience. So I'm not going to, how can I be accepting of recognizing that other people have a different experience than me and be open to learning about it, but also not feel like I have to take on, because the internet makes you feel like it's like you have to know about everything all of the time and like, and then care about everything. It's like, no, that's why the world's fucked up, because there's not enough hours in the day. Like, we can't even decide on like a decent minimum wage. You know what I mean? Like, you think that people have the energy to care about every cause? It's like, no, that's why there's corruption, because there's not enough people who have the energy to go after it. That's why, like clickbait is okay, because meaning okay of like the people just accept it, because who has the time to like, everybody would have to quit their jobs if we decided like, you know what? I don't think there's anybody who actually likes Zuckerberg, for example, but it would take all of us like not going to work and focusing all of our energy to be like, we're done with this.
Sure.
And in order to overturn it. So I just wanted to share that of, I think that it's important to be mindful of not only what we're putting out there, but like, what are we taking in?
I certainly agree with that, for sure. Yeah, I'm not discrediting why we decided to not post last week's episode. I think, it's important to think like, yeah, I was a little flippant. I could have cared more. Let's just not, for this week, let's not do it. I was only saying that for myself, I've kind of consciously stopped even going into that space mentally of like, and it's rare that I'm like, did I really believe in the things I just said? But I don't stop and consider like, how will this be interpreted? I just speak with the way I feel, because maybe that's for me. I feel like I've been oversaturated with like, care about this, do this, say that. And I'm like, I'm going to stop you guys. I don't care anymore. Okay. I'm just going to say what I want.
Sure. But I also think if you genuinely hurt someone's feelings because you were just speaking out of turn and somebody that you respect came to you in a human-to-human interaction and said something.
It's different.
I know, but I'm saying I don't think that that's fair. I think you're being a little bit of a dick, to be honest, of being like, well, I don't care what you think. It's like, yes, you do. I know you, Alex Gettlin. I know you care about.
Yes. If someone, of course I would care if I heard.
I know. So I'm just saying, like, split the difference. I'm not trying to say I'm right and you're wrong, but it's not about that. I'm just saying, like, find the softness of it too, of like, I know you. I don't think that's fair to say that you're like, well, if you don't fucking like what I say, then like, joke's on you, dude. Like, I don't think that's your take. I hear what you're saying of like, you are frustrated and no longer interested in like having to say the right things.
Sure.
I think that's fair, but you're making it sound, the way you're coming off or the way I'm hearing you is that you're not interested in learning anything different than what you know. That what you know is true and everybody else can just suck it.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, that's kind of what you sound
What
like.
I'm saying is that the people who make the most noise on the internet rarely represent what people actually think and feel.
Well, that is when I would even say, and even rarely represent that group
Sure.
that they're yelling and screaming
And
about.
because think about it, and I really the main light bulb moment went off, and I've kind of noticed this, but really light bulb moment for me was doing my solo podcast, and I kept trying to get people to come on who were not media people. So it was people who aren't activists, comics, journalists, folks who have no professional stake in being a voice on a public forum. And I have friends that are like lobbyists, lawyers, work in the government. I was just like trying to pick their brain. Like, I'd love to hear about what it's actually like in your world so people can get a fair, conversation about that. And they all were like, I love it, but I just can't have my voice out there because there's too much risk involved. So what that reminded me of is like, oh yeah, the only people who at this point dictate the cultural narratives are the ones who are fully invested in that thing. So if there's a certain issue that everybody's buzzing about, if you're not like deeply rooted in like where it goes, you probably are just going to stay out of it. Because even if you have an opinion, but it's not like hardcore to your identity or you're not really ramped up about it, you're just going to, I got stuff to do. I don't want to get involved with this shit. So you think that the people throwing temper tantrums represent how people really feel. And it's not true. And so I'm just saying, just because someone knows how to make a lot of fuss on the internet about a thing, it doesn't mean I'm just more ready to not buy into it right away. I'm like, I see what you're saying. I don't think that you, because you are loud on this space in the new town square, that I'm supposed to just adhere to what you're telling me.
I hear that. I also feel like your feathers get very ruffled though by the loudest voices. Like that's been a thing that I feel like I've offered you a lot in the spaces of like, the dumpster fire that is social media, where you'll be like, well, this thing happened. I'm like, right. Let's also acknowledge that's like, the loudest voice. So that's all the way on this side versus, it's like most things find the balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I'm hearing what you're saying. But I also feel like, you get pretty revved up pretty easily about stuff on the internet too.
Sure. Okay. I don't think that's the case as much as you think it is, but I guess we'll just...
As much as the case, I live with you. I'm with you all of the time. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but I think there's a difference between like, I laugh and I'm like, this is absurd, versus like, I'm actually deeply upset about it.
Sure. I don't mean to say that you're actively deeply upset about stuff all the time. I'm just simply saying, I think more of what you're saying falls more in the middle than like this absolute.
Sure.
Because you get very affected very easily by stuff going on in the news.
Depends what it is, but I guess to some extent, sure.
Yeah. I mean, and more people should. I'm not saying it's I mean, I think it's also, for whatever reason, that those are the things that you are attracted to. I mean, I think it's good. More people should be aware. More people should be frustrated. More people should have the awareness of the decisions that are being made, and more people should be pissed. So I'm not saying it's a negative thing at all.
Well, anyway, this very long half-hour introduction of our episode was just to set up basically that you want to stand behind everything we say on this podcast with conviction. Last week didn't feel like it was necessarily that, and we decided best option was to just forego last week.
Well, I'll release it now, but we're going to put this one out first and then the second one. And, if there was a place where we could do a Q&A, I would love, because I feel like a lot of people are going to listen to it and go, yeah, I feel like it was fine.
Yeah, it was. I was there. You didn't say anything that...
I know, but listen, again, it's just important for me of like, sure. You know what I mean? It's not like it's on Netflix where it like had to go out. If I got to, sit and think about it for a second, I feel like that's okay.
Yeah, and I hate when we have these sensors on the lights in the studio, and I can't figure out how to stop it from...
I actually like it better. I like it better with the lights off.
Oh, you do?
You know what I mean? I do.
All right. Well, anyway, so we were talking about this yesterday, and I'll just go into it briefly. But so today's Monday, January 7th. Yesterday, I learned in one of my, news sources I was
Wait, did you just say January?
June.
Okay.
Excuse me. Yeah, I did.
Did you? Okay, yeah. I just blacked out for a
Yeah.
second. And I'm like, whoa.
So
Okay.
yesterday was Sunday, June 6th. And
Okay.
I learned from just my news scrolls I'm going through that Mexico had a big election yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Not for the president, but for all different governorships and congressional seats and the smaller parties. So I talk a lot about how fucked up American politics are and how corrupt our system is, which is true. But then you see another country and what happens there, and I just stopped and I was like, oh my God, thank God this isn't like how it is here. So people, there's all this nonsense of stop the steal. The election was stolen from Trump, which is not true. I don't believe that, and any logical person doesn't believe that. But like in Mexico, it's a very contested election. I don't know the exact nuances, but there's a lot of figures. If they lose their elections, they will get thrown in prison, is the short answer. There's a lot of corruption involved with them and cartels and things. And if these political people don't win power again to keep their people in line, they will get prosecuted for their crimes if they're voted out of office. Then they'll be able to put them in prison. So there's a lot of stakes. Does that make sense how I explained it?
How you explained it, yes. I feel like the context of why they would get thrown in prison would be helpful to this conversation, but I'm going to put that part out of my mind.
They've done things that involve massive crimes, and if they're
also, what's corrupt about that?
what?
Do you know the amount of American politicians that I think should be sitting in prison right now?
For sure. But either way, so like in terms of what stealing an election actually means, people were sharing viral videos of they were like at a voting place and then guys just rolled up with guns and jacked the boxes with the ballots and took off in trucks. And it's like, oh, like that's stealing an election. So there's a lot of people running and it's very contested with the cartels and who belongs to who. If you had to guess this election cycle in Mexico, how many people running for office have been assassinated? Just guess.
Well, but you're not talking about the presidency, so I don't know. I don't know because I don't know.
89 people running for like Mexico's congressional seats and governorships. And again, it's a different country. And it also reminds me how important it is to be sympathetic of these folks who flee the border to come here. Imagine if we had even one governor or congressman assassinated in this country during an election, how chaotic it would feel. They've had 89 this one cycle. So anyway, it just reminded me.
Oh, in this one cycle.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you meant oh, yeah.
No, like this time, like this window.
So then how do they keep finding people to go into office?
Because the cartels control the country, and a large part of it is because of this stupid drug war we've been fighting that's funneling money back.
Yeah, but remember, that's where I got really frustrated. We watched the Greatest Crime in History, or what was the documentary?
Oh, yeah. Crime of the Century?
Yeah, I think so. So anyway,
Phenomenal.
It's all about
You guys should watch it.
opiates and things like that. It's on HBO. It's a hard watch, but it's 4 hours total. It's split into two series or 2 episodes. But it's really good. But I was saying that we're like, listen, and I'm not obviously like, excuse me. I recognize our freedoms in America, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I am not making light of that, but I also feel that's why our government gets away with a lot of the shit they do, because that's like in America, like you have your freedom. It's like, yeah, you guys also like create so much fucking like so much chaos is created by you guys. It is so corrupt. Now there might not be as much outward violence, certainly, and I'm incredibly grateful for that, obviously. But at the same time, it's like there's, the amount of like private funding that goes into donorship and just all of that. It's like all of you guys are just, it's a snake eating its tail. So I also don't have, it's like, fuck off. Like, that's the thing. It's like, oh, we have to fight the cartels, or like, that's why we can't let, Mexican immigrants into this. I'm like, they're coming because you basically have created the mass amounts of power through the Mexican cartels. So you have also contributed, and now this is obviously over long periods of time, but I don't know. I think it's shitty. It's like not taking fucking responsibility for, the contribution that the United States has made on the, desecration of, actual democracy in Mexico.
Yeah, it was just an example of like reminding me, it's like as fucked up as our country is in many ways. God, thank God we don't live in that kind of world. And it also is a reminder of like, for sure there is a percentage of people that come here illegally that are criminals, but a lot of these people are just escaping abject poverty and hell.
Dude, 100%. And also, until we start, like, the fact that I need to know exactly what the number is, but it's very, very, very low. Okay. Of the people that were actually not only prosecuted, but then served any time after the crash of 2008.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the Pharma documentary.
No.
The 2008, yeah.
Okay.
But rich people don't go to prison.
So fuck off. That's what I'm saying. All of it, I'm pissed now. Where it's like, the amount of energy that it's like, if someone's poor and they're a criminal, we're like, oh, get them out of here. Just attack them. But if somebody's in a suit and robs families of millions and millions of dollars, we don't do anything. So that's why for me, I'm like, it's such fucking bullshit of the way that we don't have a real justice system in this country. We have a justice system if you have money.
We have an injustice system.
100%.
Yeah. Well, that was the funniest thing to me when like all the conservative commentators after the Derek Chauvin trial were like, because if you really look at it, like the technical nuances, he probably shouldn't have been charged with like all those murder charges. They were like, this is a complete injustice, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, but you guys are acting like this hasn't been happening unfairly in the criminal justice system since the beginning of time. It's just that now it's swung the other way for once.
And you're also doing because you want to protect the narrative that racism isn't real in our country and that police are good. It's still just wanting to highlight their narrative. And that's the only problem why it really bothers me too is like our inflexibility on either side. It happens on both sides, but our inflexibility of like, we will support and stand by like whatever the narrative. I mean, it feels like, somebody who's in an abusive relationship, it's like, but I still really love them. It's like, it feels the same way. It's like,
yeah, I get
you're
it.
Just wanting to hold on to your fucking side.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I don't know what our inability, but that's also just like an ego thing of like our inability to go, we don't let people change. It's like, oh, people never change. I'm like, yeah, no wonder, because if anybody decides that they want to learn something new, we're like, idiot, or we like attack people, meaning like, okay, so if there was politicians that voted a certain way 10 years ago,
oh, right.
we now tell them they're not allowed to vote a different way.
Remember when like
we call them
flip-floppers?
Yeah.
That was a big thing they hit John Kerry with. He's a flip-flopper. It's like, shouldn't you evolve your ideals?
That's what I mean.
What?
Where it's like we have this one thing of like, well, people never change. It's like, well, why would they? Because as soon as they do, then we persecute them.
Well, that's the funny thing too. I remember people loved like the conservative different commentators that I'll listen to. They always love to highlight how like, don't forget, and whenever the context is relevant, they're like, don't forget Obama and Hillary were both opposed to gay marriage until blah, blah, blah date. It's like, yeah, people sometimes oppose things and then over time progress continues and they change their opinion. Like, come on, man. Like, you got to meet them a little bit. Like,
well, and it's also like, I don't actually trust that anybody that's that high up in government. They're not actually voting on what their actual opinions are.
Yeah.
They're voting of what's going to get them to the next thing.
Well,
you want to know why? Because when people actually try to get into positions of power in government, speaking about what they really want to change, we push them out and make sure that they're not even being able to have a voice in a position of power.
And that was the most interesting part of our Secret Service episode of Highly Unlikely with our friend Ben Glebe. Go check it out right now, podcast.wikileaf.com/highly unlikely. He was talking about when he ran for president, every candidate is expected to do 4 to 7 hours a day, every day on the phone, fundraising. So you have no time to think about your actual thoughts of policy and anything that's relevant to the actual job. You're just a fundraising money machine. And it's like, well, no wonder the system is fucked. How we fix it, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I do think that the libertarians have the best platform out there, but there's a lot of problems there too. I understand that. But either way, just that tangent was just, I just like to say that because obviously I feel very bad for the folks who live in Mexico who deal with that day to day. And it's just a reminder of like, as shitty as things are here, thank God we're not there.
Sure. I mean, like with anything, it's like you can have gratitude and also still want more, want something different. They're not mutually exclusive. You don't, it's like, that was the other narrative. Like, I remember like 15 when 9/11 was happening and being so confused of like, that was like the first time that the narrative of like, you're a patriot, you're with us or you're against us. And I was like, why are we not allowed to be critical, but also like want our fellow Americans to thrive?
Well, that was the first time in our life we saw like mass manipulation by like we really could understand it with the Iraq thing being like, we're going to Iraq. Wait, did Saddam attack us? Doesn't matter. He's got weapons and he's Muslim and he's in the similar part of the world. It's like, yeah, but wait, what do we do? Well, hold on, stop.
But that's the thing is, I'm trying to come to a place of acceptance.
Okay.
Like,
I accept you.
Just thank you. Just in general with people, like, people are complicated. Like, just thinking about individuals, how complicated they are. And, like, there's this one gal that I know that I went to high school with, and like, in many ways, like a really wonderful person, good Christian, like
Have
all
I met
this
her?
stuff. No. But then she'll also post stuff about, so the personality test, like the Enneagrams.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've talked about
So
them.
I don't really think that
You think they're BS?
I don't think they're BS, but I think that like girls that are like, I'm a 7, what are you? It's like, I don't,
How is that any more ridiculous than like, I'm a Taurus?
I'm not saying it is.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't feel like I live and die by my astrology.
No, but you're super into it. You are.
I really like phases of the moon. I'm happy to talk about that.
But
I also don't live and die by it. For me, it's a way.
You're stoked that you're a Taurus. We have a Taurus sculpture on the wall.
That's from my grandmother. It's a bull.
But you also love to talk about like. Anyway, I'll leave it alone. But I think
no, I'm not denying that those are things that I find interesting. But I feel like, again, there are things that infer the way I get in touch with myself, spiritually or emotionally. But it's also, again, I live on planet Earth. I'm not like, I think people who are just like only make decisions based on their astrology. I'm like, I don't feel like that was what this was supposed to be. It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool like anything else. If you choose to, what we give energy to, we give life to. So you can choose how much or how little you want to. Point being, this girl was one of those, pumpkin spice white women that was like, I'm a 7, I guess there was this video that was going around that was made by another like big Christian account of, another just like white woman. And it was talking about that the creator of the Enneagram was actually spiritual. And so all Christians should no longer take the test if they're truly Christians because it has to do with the evil eye. And, the evil eyes are about evil. And anyway, it was just all of these things where I was like, first of all, none of those things are, even factual, number one.
Yeah.
And I found myself getting so frustrated, and I was just like, I'm just going to mute this person. I don't have to take in this content. Like, I don't have, like...
Well, that's kind of my issue with, like, organized religion as a whole. Only to the extent of the attitude that, like, our version is the totally correct version, and everybody else's versions is bullshit. It's like, this is absurd, guys. What do you do? Come on.
Well, I told you that there was insight that I heard from a spiritual teacher, I guess, that I heard. And I'd never heard it phrased this way, which was interesting. Just food for thought. You take it in or take it or leave it. Which was organized religion or giant religions based around one person's spiritual.
Yeah.
So the idea of spirituality is that we should all be connecting to a higher power and whatever that means to us. And I was like, man, that is wild. That, it was like one person's spiritual experience. Well, that's like, everybody knows we love Papa Bert, my dad, and we were talking, and my dad's Christian and has pretty good solid faith, I would say. And he was even talking to me and said something where he was like, so crazy, sort of Bible out God being people. And he was like, so cool, like God used to show up, in all these different ways, and it's crazy that he doesn't do that now. I think my dad was taking it very literally of, like the bush is on fire talking to you. But I thought it was so interesting, and I was like, well, Dad, God is still talking to you all the time. I'm like, I don't think literally this bush was on fire. I think that was, as a writer, it's that's the Netflix version. Like, I'm not a writer. That's God just was like talking to somebody. It can be like, no, what day? Let me. He's like, no, we're gonna push fire. That's the real, But I just have Adam. Stay open to the possibility that is still talking to you all the time. Obviously, he, prays and hears, God that way and takes guidance. Interesting again of like, we do, and it's not good or bad, but we get locked into assuming that things are only a certain way, and we don't leave ourselves open to all of different ways that we can access like guides or spirituality. That was the conversation with Deborah. It was just like, yeah, but God can talk to you in so many different ways.
Yeah, the thing is, too, is even the oldest transcripts of the Bible, I'm not familiar with the Quran and others. Just so much else for this context, just the Christian New Testament and the Old Testament Christians that you share. Even the oldest written versions of that are still thousands of years, or like a significant amount of time after when they supposedly occurred. So you have to assume that it was like passed orally from generation to generation, and at some point written down. And even when it was written down in language they don't know anymore, so it was written for time. Find me in English. It's like, guys, I was to liberty here. Like all of this. Just think about when you try to like, make plans with your family or something. No, that's why. And this is my only thing with religion. Where obviously, like, what?
Your mouth pops.
Okay, can you not freak out every time it makes a little noise?
Ugh.
So obviously, prayer, and if it offend any of my Jewish family and friends hearing this, sorry, but just from praying experience, you heard it. And for me, it's all religion is sort of like, religious I've heard of your assertion, growing up Jewish stuff, it's the essence, be grateful, be kind, work hard, God loves you, etc., etc. Does it really matter the nuances of like, was there Jesus, was there, who cares? I don't care. Your dad's church is awesome. There's like laser lights, they got a full band. It's like a fun experience. I got to be honest, going to synagogue it was very boring. A lot of guys there. I'm not disparaging you. I'm saying, it's like, be sure to cool.
I feel like Christian is bad, but they're like, what can we do?
Catholic church is very boring. I've been to Catholic church before.
Catholic mass is...
It sucks. No offense, but it's very boring.
Yeah, it could use a rebrand.
Like, and again, I'm not looking, when we go to church with your dad, I don't think of it like a spiritual experience. I'm like, this is just, it's just something nice. Like, remember we went last time, I forget what his Anderson was. But this thing,
That's the other thing. When I talk to everything, like, I come from...
Can I ask one, just for context, Bert LaForce goes to a mega church, so they have the budget to do like a full-scale production.
Yeah, it's
for reference.
Like when we were there last time and Alex like eyeing up the cameras they have, I was like, you can go talk to the camera guy if you want. Like,
dude, they had a camera on a crane. That's very impressive. If you have kind of production, how much it costs. But I was like, dude, like full rolls with graphics.
It's wild. Yeah, I think that's something, especially whenever I'm talking about, to me, hearing yourself and like, because whenever I talk about like, you have to make your own choices, you have to touch with your intuition, and people are like, no, like God should guide you. And I'm like, that is God. Like, why? I don't know why we keep like separating it from us.
Yeah.
I'm like, to me, it's like,
I have theory finished. Tell you, Mike.
Yes, like, God, however, this higher power is all knowing being, but it's something of like, intuition that God is, like, praying, it's like her God's voice. I don't know, it would actually be fun to do it. Really just hearing your own voice. It's your own guidance.
Who would I want the voice of God to sound like? Probably David Attenborough.
I was like Morgan Freeman, because he's pretty much played God and everything.
Yeah, that's good too. I like David Attenborough, because you know who that is from Planet Earth. You don't know, he's the narrator of Planet Earth. He's British and just very, like, David Attenborough. Man, I can do that, but really, who's the worst? Who's the worst voice for you? Ben Shapiro.
Oh, really gets paid.
Yeah, Tuck Carlson, and those Fox News type people. I think any like obnoxious, male conservative, Tommy Lauren to be a shit god too.
Oh, gosh.
At least Ben is educated. Tommy's to get.
Just like, well, I don't think it's that. I'm sure that she to do what she's doing, she has to be well read.
That's fair.
But and I'm not taking away from the hustle. I just have never met anybody who's so disconnected from themselves, and that's my thing. Where I can advise anybody, well, you might go for me. You know what you're talking about.
So I was saying before, theory about like people shit with God, or it's like,
I'm going. Where I understand that people are complicated and people need it to be a certain thing, right? Because it's like, that intrinsic value, it's that intrinsic truth that if it's not that, it will rock my entire identity of everything that I believe to be true, right? That's a lot of why we don't accept things, even when we know that they're not. Like past relationships of mine, I knew, even on a somewhat of level it's supposed to be, if I were to accept that, it'll rock the reality of how all the choices enter actually knows what's to be. So that's just a small example. Like we do that in life all of the time, right? That's what's crazy to me, where it's like, when I talk about guiding yourself and how to do that, and people, want to separate it, like into religions or anything like that. And I'm like, well, why? We're all saying the same thing. It's okay if you say this is what I accept.
But in
general, but it's like for the most part, we're all saying the same thing.
Well,
it's a big universalist.
When I was a kid, I didn't really understand the word. Honestly, I was always big Jewish and was proud of being Jewish.
Sounds like you'd braised Jewish, which is very funny.
Oh, I gotta say born Jewish. Yeah, and then remember there were just different experiences of like.
Well, I like that then. So braised is now born and raised. Just make it easier.
I think braised is a word for something else.
It is.
It's me. Let's look it up.
I think braised is neat.
That's right.
That's why born and raised is married. You're married to.
I guess you can marry either of these. No, and I just go religion. Now there are people who are very, very devout in their faith, and that works for you. That's great. But my point I was getting at I was little because I was so like Jewish. If I attended something that wasn't a Jewish prayer service, I felt like I'm always we had like Sunday prayer. And someone who's like, believe my shit or you're going to hell. It's like, well, that I have a problem with. But when you're little, like it was hard for me to like know how to tell the difference. But I think a big part of it when it comes to God and in the most broad sense. Because if someone's like, Alex, do you believe in God? I would say, I believe there are things in this world that are more powerful than humans that we can't comprehend. It could be God, it could be the universe, whatever. That's what I believe. Beyond that, who knows? But I think for some people, a blind faith in God makes them feel like they no longer, if you believe in God, God fixing this will most likely require you doing some hard work to get to that place.
Oh, I have such issue with that because that's the toxic part to me about Christianity where they kind of lose me.
Yeah.
Which is that of like, well, we'll just pray. And I always quote that of like faith without action.
Yeah.
It takes both. God can direct you. God can tell you what to do. You know, it's like you can take a horse to water, you know, but you can't make him drink. It's the same thing. And so, that concept to me is so toxic and misleading. And then we're not helping people.
Yeah.
We're not actually helping people because you're telling them if they just pray, then their problems will go away. That's not true. Prayer should bring you a sense of peace. It should bring you a sense of security, a sense of belonging. But it's not going to fix your fucking problems. You have to do something about it. You have to, and in whatever way that is. And I also think that, you know, the idea of going, well, if you don't believe what I believe, then you're going to hell is also such an egotistical human thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, I'm like, if you think about anything that feels like God, and I think most people have had an experience, at least one in their life, where they're like, wow, this feels like bigger than me. You know
what's funny to me too is keep going.
But I was just going to say that with that, it's like, how could you ever think that when you have that feeling, there's no judgment in that feeling? That feeling feels like floating. It feels like flying. And so I think that people just gear towards what makes sense to them, and the judgment part of it is the other part that I can't get my head around of like, I think it creates this thing for people, again, of that, well, I'm right and you're wrong, which is the antithesis of faith and love in God to me. But anyway.
It's just funny to me. And then after this, I want to move on to a thing to wrap us up with. It'll be fun.
Well, I might have to wrap sooner than that. I really have to use the restroom.
We'll run to the restroom and I'll just pontificate solo for a second. I don't
Really?
I don't want to stop the podcast.
Okay.
So I'll do a little pontificating. You'll miss it if you listen.
It's fine. I live with you. You pontificate all of the time.
Yeah. This is like, guys, this is a sneak peek into when I do a solo episode of Let Me Be Clear, which is not often enough because highly unlikely and all that stuff. But yeah, to me, on Rachel's point about the religion stuff, it's just kind of funny when you think about, even if there is some religion that gets it right, which I'm very skeptical any religion today nailed it. But so many faiths, what we were saying before, they have this attitude of like, either you believe what we believe or you're going to burn in hell, which I find so ridiculous because that means you have to accept that billions of people alive today and through history are burning in hell just because they didn't pick the right faith. And, you could argue, okay, well, that just means people who were like exposed to the religion and then rejected it. And even that is absurd because it's like you're just assuming that someone is supposed to reject everything they were taught and raised on because some proselytizer, I don't know if that's a word, but somebody was coming to try and preach to them about whatever faith. And I don't know, it's just it's kind of like the OG version of shaming people for not doing, like now we see people shaming folks for not getting vaccinated, for getting vaccinated, for, whatever the fucking thing is that we're up in arms about. It's like the original version of that. So, I always wonder, I don't know, I wonder if we're ever going to grow out of that. I mean, I do know that in many ways, well, I guess probably not, because I was going to say in many ways, the United States and Europe and parts of the world are becoming more secular, but at the same time, we still seem to find things. I don't think we tell anybody now, like the secular world doesn't have a version of hell, but I guess they do believe in like canceling. Okay, so Rach, on that note, I'm going to use the restroom real quick because I don't want to be rushed, but why don't you just expand on what you were saying? I was saying, just to give you some context, if you want to tag on it, I was saying how absurd it is, I think, in today's world that you could really believe that someone would go to hell because they didn't pick the right religion. And that means like you're just accepting that like billions of people on earth and who have already passed away are burning in eternal hell because they happened to be born into the wrong religion or they were living in the wrong part of the world. Like this, when you really stop and think about that, how absurd that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because, you know, and I know that I still have Christian guilt because that's so much of my family and my background, where it's like, even to say anything out against it, there's like 8-year-old Rachel inside me that's like, but I don't want my family to think that, like, I don't think that they're smart or that I don't, you know, like it's that I'm somehow going against them, but that's not at all what's true. And also that would be pompous for me to even assume that I really understand like their connection and their relationship with God. So who am I to think that I'm smart enough to know their experience? But it also, to me, it just feels like such a control tactic, you know, like such this old school. We do the same thing now. It's fear-based. You know, it was like, but we didn't have social media then to scare people. So we created a religion where it's like, if you don't think like us, then like you're going to hell. Like, what a high stakes, again, that idea of like creating something that's so high stakes that it would like scare the crap out of you. Like, even just like the thought of hell, you know, and that doesn't even make sense. It's like, you know.
I know what hell would be for you. Your personal hell?
Just Costco on a Saturday.
Oh, I was going to say that flight we took home from Atlanta most recently, where you're like 7 months pregnant, wearing a mask. It's crowded. It's hot. You're swollen. So I'll let you finish, but we're almost at an hour, or we're actually an hour and 1 minute, but I do have something fun I wanted to wrap up with.
Go for it.
Okay. So my favorite, we have so many projects, but my favorite.
So many projects.
We
so
do.
little time.
But my favorite Rachel LaForce project that is kind of on a quasi hiatus is Tracy.
Yeah.
But you guys, and we'll get back to it after baby Jonah's born. But Tracy learns the news, or last week's news with Tracy. Well, what do we call it?
Well, it was Rachel learns the news.
Oh, yeah.
And then I basically just took that same idea and took it to Tracy, which is last week's news with Tracy.
So I have 2 articles here.
Okay.
That, you know, you're going to have a lot of reactions on. And I would love to just hear you give a little tease for our listeners as Tracy reading these off.
Oh, well, if I would have known that, I would have brought her.
Well, no, you just do the audio for this one.
Okay.
You know? And it's like a tease. I want to do these a little bit here and there on Common Ground until we have time to get back into Tracy proper.
Well, why don't we just do Rachel learns the news?
Okay, but I think it's funnier when you react as Tracy than when you react.
I know, but when people see me as Rachel, I'm just saying.
Okay,
I'm very protective of Tracy.
I'll let you pick, but here's the first. Well, I got one that's going to kill you. Oh, here's
Oh, no.
Which you do, yeah, a fun one first. Okay.
Oh, my God. Texas mom is arrested for posing as her 13-year-old daughter and attending classes all day is in the middle school's security.
First thoughts.
Why do you keep arresting people for doing, clap for her? You know? Okay, so Casey Garcia, 30, arrested for criminal trespassing after posing as a 13-year-old daughter and attending an entire day of class at her school. Was anyone there? She sat in classes?
Yeah, I think because of the face mask, she was able to get through sneakily because she's like, yeah, if I just put up my hoodie and have a mask on, you won't know who it is. And she was trying to.
Wouldn't that be more scary? If I'm teaching a class of middle schoolers and there's clearly somebody who's not, somebody who's taught middle schoolers before, you're going to know if somebody in your class is not middle school.
Well, here's two.
Okay, she said, "Ralph, no, you know that you got a little bit of me. Stop. It wasn't until the final period the teacher noticed and confronted her. Garcia later recorded a video explaining why she did it. I still don't understand why she was arrested. Because they're just pissed that she proved a point.
Probably. Well, technically it is criminal trespassing in the technical sense. Super charge because they were embarrassed.
Yeah. You wonder what this does, how dumb they are. Shouldn't we not tell anyone about this.
Yeah, it's all photos.
I'm saying, how are I am. They are that's Tim
These are just the listeners. It's kind of quite fun for asking Tracy. Tracy would have reaction. My thought is I would hate to go to my third school because I would fail. I don't remember any girl. That's hard.
Calculate imaginary numbers. No, I am scrolling out. No, you and I still think.
Okay. That thing something that we'll just on to this one. But I know I have a lot of thoughts. I don't know what's going on here.
Just know what the one is.
You get
all these spaces go to space artists.
So you're right.
Well, I mean, I asked for it, but it's a clean thing. You're not arguing. Okay, you're fed an argument for $700,000. Dude, egg in my face. Okay, you're starting new economy in space.
Well, they are, but it's for the billionaires, for the 1%ers.
Okay, then go somewhere else. You're gonna live in space. That's fine. That's where they should be because they're out of their minds already. You know?
Right. So anyway, so let me just give you the highlights of this because I read it in articles. So South CEO officially from Amazon. Oh, what? He's on Amazon Space Tour. So Origin, I believe his name is Amazon. Bezos and Elon Musk competing to take over space. The two of them are like the billionaires.
That is the I'm sorry. My head is going to explode. I hate it. I hate everything about it. And how would you even take self serious? How do you? I know I started podcasting that too. This is true. I know when you're a kid, then the grown male, okay, worth out who's to live in space. Your truth doesn't matter.
Well, it's this today's version of exploring the new world. It's all Europe did when they conquered the rest of the planet. And now we look back at them as monsters. But at the time, people thought they were heroes.
Well, these two are monsters. I don't think they're heroes. What are they going to do out there?
Anyway,
they lost.
Ever
since I was 5 years, I dreamed of going to space. I was 50 cents and the money would cost. July 20th, I will take there with my brother. The greatest adventure we ever had. What a loser.
I don't know. I mean, yeah.
So what are they doing out there?
I think it's just like they're just flying around. It doesn't seem like they're not going to the moon or anything.
So they're just going into the different atmosphere. They're not going anywhere. They're just going to circle around and be like, we did it, and come back.
Yeah, so Elon Musk, Bezos, Richard Branson, all these guys are trying to dominate,
And we still don't want to tax them more.
A lot of people do. It's near impossible. This is the simplified version of why they don't quote-unquote pay their taxes. It's like less only you can percent. They have so much money and power that Jeff Bezos could sue the government if they want to. It's really, really difficult to.
Why do we give them internet attention?
What do you mean?
Like, that's frustrating. Like, CNN Business, I'd be like, we're not talking about this. You guys want to donate in 1% of your wealth so that people in Flint, Michigan can have like clean drinking water?
Sure.
And maybe I'll think you would achieve something.
I know what you're saying. Well,
if you've made billions and millions of dollars off of other people working hard, I can see a certain extent of when people just call Jeff Bezos smart, I'm not going to like, it's the books. I don't think the motherfucker had this like long version of what I think he got really lucky. Yeah. I think that the internet was evolving at a time where he was already in a position of power, and I think that he got lucky and smart enough to keep up with it. Okay, I just think that's not the other thing that don't be smart. Is I think people who are really smart would know that they can still stay rich. Some of the powerful people in the world to back in the workplace. That's what a smart person does. So I think he just looks like an alligator with glasses. I can't stand.
Okay, so you had to spend 6 months in space with Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, or Mark Zuckerberg. They're kind of like the Mount Rushmore of billionaire dudes. I feel like you'd be able to tolerate Bill most.
That's what I was gonna say. He could teach a lot, and I feel like it would only would suddenly become therapist because I'd be like, I'm gonna do. There's a lot of.
Okay, so come on, I really have to have
I know we got to up to that. He's not just gonna tell you. Okay, it's only 6 months. He knows he's coming back. I've got to build inherent trust. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's So anyway, so again, I was hoping
Zuckerberg would definitely be the last because he's like a fucking little needle nose.
They all kind of are.
Yeah, but Elon, I think, is actually a huge dork. You can see a picture of him the best photo of himself.
Yeah.
Like, but he's like such a dork. Like, to me, he's a grown-up 13-year-old who was a huge dork, and he's just kind of on Bezos. I'm just like, no thanks. But Zuckerberg would be the most difficult because he's just kind of a brick.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, so I thought this was super cool.
Of course, if I had these left, that wouldn't be my own. No.
I'm sure
they're going on
space.
Yeah, they're going to space on their own dime. Hard to say.
Yeah, technically, July 20th, 15 days.
Is Biden still our president?
As of last time I checked, yeah, Biden.
Okay.
But I don't think he's really our president. I mean, I know he is like in.
Who's running our country right now? Yeah, what's going on?
Like my theories are.
I mean, it's okay. I didn't say that.
For the most part, it seems like the DNC, the National Democratic.
Who's next in our government?
Right. How people forget that the DNC and the GO private entities, they do not hold with anyone but their donor base, and even that is sort of subjective. See, people forget, man. Like the government, you and I, America, we are the government. The people of this country, we are the government, and I understand There's a lot of flaws with the libertarian platform, and I'm not like an actual like I love libertarianism, but I'm just gotten to the point where it's like I'd rather do that than something else because you know what keeps getting these two parties to win elections? All they do is convince you that the other side is so bad, it's the end of life as we know it if they lose. And we keep falling for the folks represented in our government, but fuck these two parties so hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's all just that's also where everybody on the internet has just lost me. And I think, we'll wrap from where we started, which was a lot of my flippancy of what I was speaking about last week was coming from that place of anger where I'm like, stop pointing the finger and saying that the other people aren't doing it right because your team's not doing it right either.
Yeah.
Everybody's just like, it just looks like a bunch of monkeys like throwing poop.
And the thing that I really think, and you and I have both seen it, we talk about it all the time, the same way that like evangelical Christians will fall for like the Republicans or the Party of Christ, all these young woke progressives are like, see, like Budweiser loves gay pride. It's like Budweiser also, maybe Budweiser's not a good example, but like Coca-Cola is a better one. Coca-Cola also does like massive business in like Iran and Saudi Arabia where they execute people for being gay. You can go to prison for life for being gay. So if you really believe that Coke supports pride, tell them to get the fuck out of those countries.
Well, that's why there was that, this is why I shouldn't do a podcast when I'm this pregnant because I am completely inefficient.
And
at this
make
point.
sure you say the announcement. When we
I will. I'm completely verbally inefficient at this point. But there's an infographic that's going around about all I think it's like 5 or 7 very big companies that their logo right now is the
pride flag.
The pride flag.
Colors, yeah.
But then it shows how much money that they donated to anti-LGBTQ companies. I mean, I'm talking like millions and millions of dollars.
Sure, I believe it.
But that's also why, to a certain extent, I was thinking about this the other day because there's a guy in our neighborhood who like, wow, he is there for Trump. You know what I mean? Like he's always, you know what I'm talking about? He's always got
he's got a fuck Biden flag in his garage.
Yeah. Like, I mean, he's a personality. You can just tell. But every day, and there's lot of multi cultures too in our community, like where we live too.
Great.
And I was thinking about that where I was like, everyone is so friendly though. Everyone I drive by, it's a wave. How are you? Because the interesting thing is it's like, regardless of our individual differences, where we live is a community.
Yes.
So we're all together guarding and taking care of our community to keep each other safe. And that was interesting where I was like, this is the perfect example of why, and I don't fully mean this,
oh boy.
but it's interesting, of food for thought of why we're not actually supposed to know what everyone around us thinks.
Exactly.
Because and in particular to companies. But also companies used to be like Sears, where it was like very small and you would go and you'd buy a vacuum.
I think Sears still exists.
No, I know, but I'm just saying they used to be, it was a much smaller operation.
Yeah.
Now like Disney owns 9 different things. Like we don't have businesses, we have monopolies.
Well, monopoly size companies just became the new version of kings, really, when you think about it. I mean, we had
of what?
Like kings, like kingdoms.
Okay.
Like
I heard kinks, and I was very confused.
Like the British Empire, Julius Caesar, or whatever.
Sure,
it's just someone who dominates the world with their influence.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, which is, so I understand why people want to know who and what they support, but I'm also like, you can't assume that a company as big as Pfizer, they were one of the companies on there that had their gay flag, but then also donated upwards of like $5 million to, politicians who are anti-gay. So you also, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I think they're corrupt as fuck, but I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but you can't ask a company that has that much power to be quote unquote good, because nobody is good. You can't have that much power by making right decisions.
Yeah.
You want to know why CEOs are assholes? Because they were able to fuck over enough people to get to that seat. It's Like
Probably.
there's
yeah.
a reason
Not
why
all of them, but I
know,
in
but
general.
there's a reason why people who work in social work and nonprofits typically tend to be empaths because they care more about their fellow man than they're padding their bank account. You know, their personalities.
That's also one theory of a reason amongst many reasons why women do not typically achieve certain positions of power in society that men do, because men are more prone to not be empathic and can just push through for like blind perseverance, and women tend to not have that trait. Now, the merits of it you can argue, but just the fact is, in general, that's not as common the case. So women tend to go into what you were saying before.
Sure.